The scent of mesquite smoke filled our Austin backyard during the annual family cookout when my father, Rob, caught my gaze across the patio. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You know, Jenna, if you were to just vanish tomorrow, it wouldn't make a difference to anyone. I'm Jenna Marshall, 27 years old and still living in my childhood bedroom because every cent I made was swallowed by his supposed household account." The sizzle of brisket on the grill was the only sound for a moment. Then everyone laughed, a wave of casual cruelty that washed right over me. I placed my paper plate on the table, stood up, and my voice was steady when I replied, "Good, because when the sun comes up, I won't be the one who's gone." That very night, I packed everything I could fit into 2 suitcases, left my house key on the granite countertop, and drove away without a second glance. No dramatic note, no tearful goodbyes, just the endless ribbon of the highway and the sound of his laughter finally dying behind me. Have you ever had to sever ties with your family just to save yourself? Tell me your city and your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and hit subscribe to see how this all played out. The I-35 stretched out like a black void in front of me, the distorted guitars of some 90s rock band fuzzing through the car speakers. My thoughts drifted back 4 years to when I was 23 and naively believed that sacrificing for your family was a noble act. I had just graduated from a local college and scored my first real job in tech support, bringing in a respectable $50,000 a year. My father, Rob Marshall, had sat me down at the dining room table, his laptop open to a series of complicated spreadsheets. He laid out a story about a temporary mortgage shortfall, explaining that he needed me to move back home just for a little while to help bridge the gap. He was flipping a speedboat he claimed was a guaranteed high-profit sale. He called it the household account. Every single dollar from my paycheck was funneled directly into his bank account. Rent, utilities, food. I paid for all of it, though my name wasn't on a single bill. He never really asked. It was just an expectation. I remember wiring him the first payment on the very day I moved back in, my suitcase still sitting by the front door. My mother, Susan Marshall, just watched from the kitchen entryway, stirring a pot of something, offering no words as he confirmed the transfer on his phone. She had to have known the math was wrong, but her silence was the price of peace in our house. It wasn't long before Rob took out a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, for $150,000, and he didn't tell a soul. I stumbled upon the documents by accident months later, tucked away inside a box of old financial records. He'd used the money to buy a 29-foot Mastercraft, which he kept docked at a marina on Lake Travis. He'd host big parties on it every weekend with his buddies from his general contracting business. And the name, painted in gaudy gold letters across the back? The Kyle. Named after my brother, the family's golden child who hadn't paid a single bill a day in his adult life. Kyle Marshall had moved into a trendy downtown Austin apartment at 24, his deposit paid for by a hefty signing bonus from his new sales gig. But Rob still slipped him cash constantly, a few hundred here, 1,000 there, for his car payments or for a weekend trip to New Orleans. I'd see the payment notifications on our shared family phone plan. Kyle never asked where the money was coming from. He had no reason to. It never came out of his own pocket. I stayed quiet for far too long, watching my own paychecks disappear before I could even touch them. Rob always had a new emergency. A sudden roof leak, a broken air conditioner, property taxes that were mysteriously due early. I would transfer the money and he would spend it. The boat got a brand new sound system. Kyle took a trip to Miami. My mother would come home with new designer shoes she found on sale, whispering that they were just little pick-me-ups. One night, I logged into the joint account we supposedly shared. The balance was zero. Rob had cleared it out to pay for his marina docking fees. I finally confronted him out in the garage as he was hooking the boat trailer up to his truck. He just shrugged, claiming the contracting market was a bit slow and the household account needed a little boost. When I demanded to see the bank statements, he gave me a folder filled with printouts of outgoing transfers. My name was on every single line item. I saw it then. There had been no payments made on the mortgage in over 6 months. The HELOC balance was just continuing to balloon. Just then, my mother walked into the garage, saw the papers in my hand, and immediately looked away. "Your father knows best, Jenna," she mumbled, before quietly shutting the door behind her. That was her go-to phrase for everything. The next day, I got a text from Kyle. "Dad says you're giving him a hard time. Just back off." Attached was a selfie of him on the boat, a beer in his hand with the sparkling waters of Lake Travis behind him. I just stared at the picture until my eyes went blurry. That was when I started my own secret savings account at a small credit union on the other side of town, siphoning off small amounts of cash from my grocery money. When my transfers to my father's account started to shrink, he noticed. He cornered me by the washing machine one evening, his voice low and threatening. "Families stick together, Jenna. You don't get to just walk away when money gets tight." I just nodded, but I didn't stop saving. The boat sat in the driveway for most of the winter, covered by a heavy tarp. Rob tried to list it for sale once, but the price was laughably high. He got no offers. Meanwhile, the interest on the HELOC just kept accumulating. I did the math myself. My contributions were covering the interest, but none of it was touching the principal debt. Then Rob refinanced the loan behind my back, pulling out another $25,000 for what he called engine maintenance. For his birthday that year, Kyle got a brand new luxury watch. My mother hosted her book club, pouring expensive wine on the deck that overlooked the hill country. Our neighbors would always comment on the beautiful view, but no one ever wondered how we could afford it all. I'd just smile and refill their glasses, all the while mentally calculating how many overtime shifts it would take to cover the cost. Rob threw a massive Super Bowl party on the boat, inviting what felt like the entire neighborhood. I ended up catering the whole thing with money from my overtime pay. Kyle live-streamed the party from the captain's chair, tagging boat accessory brands in his posts. The comments poured in, "Living the high life." I was the one scrubbing the boat deck at 2 a.m, the smell of bleach stinging my nostrils. When spring arrived, Rob started planning a big fishing trip to the coast. He needed all new gear, of course. For the very first time, I said no. He just laughed in my face and called me ungrateful. My mother just sighed and told me I was being overly dramatic. Kyle blocked my number after I sent him a text asking why our father was still paying his rent. My secret savings account kept growing, $100 here, $50 there. Rob was getting suspicious. I caught him going through my phone while I was in the shower, but he didn't find anything. I had started using cash transfer apps under a different name. The HELOC statements suddenly stopped showing up in the mail. I realized Rob must be intercepting them, shredding any evidence he didn't want me to see. I ordered duplicate copies online, and my stomach dropped when I saw the new balance, $175,000. The interest payments alone were more than my entire old salary. One morning, my mother found me crying in front of my laptop in the kitchen. She just gently closed the screen. "He'll pay it all back as soon as the boat sells," she promised softly. I knew the online listing had expired weeks ago. Shortly after, Kyle announced he was engaged and had asked Rob for help with a down payment on a house. Rob agreed instantly, without a second of hesitation. I transferred my usual payment that month anyway. It was just a force of habit. At 27, I was still stuck in that spare room, the same posters from my high school days hanging on the walls, their corners starting to curl. Rob was installing a new stereo system on the boat. Kyle was posting his engagement photos online. My mother was busy planning the wedding catering. The household account was nothing but a black hole, and it was dragging my life down with it. My credit score was tanking from missed payments on a credit card Rob had talked me into getting. He'd offered to co-sign, put his name on it first, and then maxed it out in less than a month on a bunch of power tools he never even used. I finally stopped asking questions, and I started making my own plans. The rest stop just outside of Round Rock was quiet, bathed in the eerie orange glow of the highway lights. A dark SUV was idling in the back of the lot, its hazard lights blinking rhythmically. My cousin, Maya Torres, got out of the car, her hoodie pulled up over her head. She was holding a small pouch. She gave me a quick, tight hug but didn't ask about the 2 large suitcases in the back of my car. 10 years ago, my father had promised her a percentage of the profits from a big remodeling job they worked on together. He vanished with the entire deposit. She had kept records of everything. Maya handed me a small flash drive. Scanned contracts, text messages, wire transfers, she said. He probably thinks I deleted all this years ago. Then she pulled out her phone, opened an app, and a few seconds later, a notification popped up on my screen. $75,000 had just been deposited into my new secret bank account. The money came from a completely separate legal settlement she had won against another shady contractor. It was clean, legitimate, and totally untraceable back to my family. She started walking back to her car, the engine already rumbling. I found a place in North Austin. It's about a 20-minute drive. Get some sleep. You can start looking for a job in the morning. The sound of her tires on the gravel faded as she drove off into the darkness. I merged back onto I-35, the skyline of Austin, a faint glimmer on the horizon. A studio apartment above a cafe on a busy street showed up on a short-term rental site. I paid for 1 week using the Cash App. The owner had left the key in a small lockbox next to the door. The apartment smelled like fresh paint. A simple queen-sized bed faced a large window overlooking the street below. I could hear the gentle hum of the espresso machines from the cafe downstairs. I set up my laptop on the small table, gave my resume a complete overhaul, and started applying for jobs. I signed up for a free trial of a professional networking site and fired off more than 24 customized cover letters for positions like project coordinator, junior data analyst, and associate roles all across Austin's booming tech scene. I sent applications out until the sun started to rise. I managed to get about 4 hours of sleep, took a quick shower, and then went downstairs for an espresso while I scrolled through my email. By midday, the responses had started to come in, a mix of automated rejection emails and a few invitations for interviews. My first interview was virtual. I set up my laptop, blurred my background, and answered the hiring manager's questions about agile development methodologies. I drew on my old tech support experience, reframing my call log notes as user stories. The second round interview was in person just 2 days later, in a sleek glass office building. I had to get a visitor's badge at the security desk, and then I was interviewed by a panel of 3 people. They had me work through problems on a whiteboard, creating a mock project plan. They offered me the position of Associate Product Manager, right there in the room. The starting salary was $82,000, plus stock options. I signed the digital offer letter from the kitchen table in my rental, my heart beating steadily for what felt like the first time in years. After that first week, I moved into a furnished apartment under a corporate lease. It was in a high-rise building with a gym and was only a 10-minute drive from my new office. My key card let me through the security turnstiles and up to the 12th floor to an office with a view of the city park. My new team welcomed me with company swag, hoodies, water bottles, and a standing desk. The onboarding process was thorough, covering everything from the 401k matching program to the health plan and a public transit subsidy. I immediately set my contributions to the maximum. My paychecks were deposited directly into the new credit union account Maya had helped me set up. No shared access, no joint anything. My days fell into a new rhythm. Daily team meetings at 9 o'clock sharp. I was put in charge of the product roadmap for a new data migration tool, which meant I was coordinating with engineers in Mumbai and designers in Seattle. The feedback cycles were tight, and we were pushing out new software releases every week. After my very first project review, my manager, Sheila, pulled me aside. "You're a natural at this," she said. "Keep this up, and you'll be on track for a promotion within 6 months." I started eating lunch on the rooftop deck with a view of the Texas Hill Country in the distance. My new coworkers would talk about their weekend plans, hiking trips, new breweries, and brunch spots. I would just smile and listen, keeping my own history locked away. My evenings became structured and productive. Workouts on the treadmill, meal prepping for the week, and studying for online certification courses, my savings account started to grow. My emergency fund quickly reached 3 months' worth of living expenses. Sometimes my teammates would invite me out for happy hour. I went once, had a single beer, and went home early. Setting boundaries was more important to me than fitting in. At my 90-day performance review, I received an exceeds expectations rating. My bonus was in the 5-figure range. I put half of it into index funds and the other half into my savings. Soon after, Sheila made me the lead on a critical project. A major client, a Fortune 500 company, was threatening to leave. I dove into the project, renegotiated the scope, and delivered the final product under budget. The company's leadership team took notice. My weekends became about exploring my new city. I'd go to farmers markets, run the trails along the river, and explore the vintage shops on South Congress. I kept my phone on Do Not Disturb for any calls from my old area code. My apartment lease was now month to month. I kept my life simple: a bed, a desk, and a few plants I bought from a local nursery. No pictures on the walls, no ghosts from the past. I started collecting professional certifications, one in cloud architecture, then another in data security. I joined online study groups and used flashcards on the bus ride to work. My team had an off-site retreat in a small town in the hill country. We did a ropes course, trust falls, and a zip line. I didn't hesitate for a second. The respect I was earning from my peers felt quiet and real. Within 6 months, my salary was raised to $90,000. My first batch of stock options vested. I started mentoring the new hires, running workshops on project management. My new life in Austin started to feel like home. Its streets, its skyline, its steady rhythm, they were all mine. My roots here were still shallow, but for the first time, they were my own. Then, a text message lit up my phone screen. It was from Kyle. Dad filed a police report, said you stole 30 grand. I just stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then I blocked his number and turned my phone off. The next morning, I opened a cloud drive on my work computer. The folder was labeled Contributions. It had been untouched since the night I left home. It contained 5 years' worth of my financial life, exported bank statements, screenshots, and PDFs. Every single transfer was tagged with the note Household Account, with timestamps that lined up perfectly with my paydays. There were emails from Rob with blunt subject lines like, "Send the usual by end of day, mortgage is due." I zipped all the files, encrypted them, and backed everything up onto an external solid-state drive. A police report meant he was escalating things. I started searching for law firms in Austin and found a private investigator with a background in IRS investigations. I called him from a burner phone app. A man with a gravelly voice named Leo Vance answered and scheduled a meeting with me for that same day. I drove across town to a nondescript office building. His office was located above a smoke shop, the blinds on the windows half closed. Leo was wearing a worn-out baseball cap, and he scrolled through the files on the drive I had brought. "On the surface, these look like voluntary transfers," he said. "But the context is everything. If he's claiming you stole from him, we're going to turn this whole story around on him." He quoted me his flat fee, $5,000 up front. I wired him the money from my savings account without hesitation. During that first week, Leo tracked my father's every move. He followed him on his runs to the hardware store and to the marina. He took pictures of the Mastercraft, which was now covered by a new tarp, the registration numbers clearly visible. He pulled public records that confirmed the HELOC's origination date and the entire draw history. Even though the specific statements were redacted, Leo noted that my father hadn't claimed any of the mortgage interest deductions on the joint tax returns, which I had accessed using an old password. He dug even deeper. Rob had been filing his taxes as the head of the household and was claiming the interest on the boat loan as a business expense for his contracting LLC. But there was no business income that matched the withdrawals. Leo cross-referenced the county records and found that the property taxes had been consistently paid late, with the penalties waived each time through appeals that Rob filed himself. Surveillance photos showed Rob making large cash deposits at casino ATMs shortly after his visits to the marina. Leo sent me the grainy images, my father at a teller window holding thick stacks of cash. We met again at a coffee shop. He slid a thumb drive across the table towards me. The interest on a HELOC has to be itemized if you're going to deduct it, he explained. Your father skipped that step for 3 years straight. That's over 30 grand in unreported adjustments. It's more than enough to trigger an audit. Back at my apartment, I meticulously built a timeline. Rob's emails demanding money lined up perfectly with the dates of the HELOC draws and his subsequent large cash withdrawals. One of his messages read, "Need extra for an equipment lease. Transfer it to the business account." Leo had found the matching receipt from the marina for a fuel purchase made on the same day. Next, Leo ran credit checks. Rob had opened 3 new high-limit credit cards since I had left, and their balances were climbing fast. The payments were all coming from the same checking account that I had once been forced to fund. Through his contacts, Leo was able to get internal records from the banks. The HELOC draws that were labeled home improvement had actually been spent on things like a new boat trailer and an outboard motor, not on any repairs to the house. A copy of the police report finally arrived. Rob was accusing me of siphoning $30,000 from him through a series of unauthorized withdrawals. The report listed the dates of my old transfers, but he had cropped out the household account notes. Leo just chuckled. "Classic projection," he said. "He's trying to create a fake paper trail to cover his own tracks." I added my own forensic notes to the file, including email metadata that proved the IP address belonged to Rob, not me, and screenshots of read receipts showing he had seen my messages and never disputed them. Leo then requested my father's IRS transcripts. Rob had filed for an extension every single year and had only ever paid the minimum amount due. Each time he requested a penalty abatement, he cited reasonable cause related to his business cash flow, but he never attached any proof. The final report was 40 pages long, filled with appendices, sworn affidavits, and chain of custody logs. Leo had it all notarized and then emailed me the final PDF. "This flips the burden of proof," he said. "His theft claim will completely fall apart under any real scrutiny." I forwarded a few key pages to a tax attorney I knew through work, who looked at it pro bono. He confirmed that claiming those kinds of deductions without the corresponding income was a major red flag for the IRS. Leo had uncovered even more. Rob's LLC showed a steady decline in revenue, while his personal spending had skyrocketed. He had backdated vendor invoices to align with his HELOC draws. A detective left me one voicemail, which I ignored. I let Leo handle all the communication from then on. The evidence was all neatly stacked up. My voluntary contributions versus his undocumented borrowing. The fact that Rob had been misusing the home equity line for his own personal gain was now undeniable. Leo ended our last conversation with a warning. "The IRS can be slow," he said. "But once that first letter arrives, the dominoes will start to fall." I uploaded all the files to a secure cloud vault with 2-factor authentication, made hard copies, and locked them in the safe in my apartment. The report was ready. It was a counterpunch, just waiting to be thrown. The sealed IRS envelope arrived at my parents' address in a certified mail packet. Leo forwarded me a scan of the delivery receipt, which had been signed for by my father. It was a notice of examination, a full-blown audit. The letter cited discrepancies in unreported interest income from the home equity line. An appointment was set at the Federal Building in downtown Austin. The agent's name was redacted. Rob scrambled and hired a cheap tax preparer at the last minute, rushing to pull together stacks of messy manila folders. The auditor requested the original HELOC documents, all the draw logs and receipts to substantiate the expenses. Rob produced a few partial bank statements, claiming the money had been used for home renovations, But he had no receipts for building materials and no invoices from any contractors other than his own LLC. The auditor flagged the interest deductions because there was no corresponding 1099 INT form from the lender. Rob tried to argue that he had a verbal agreement with the bank that waived the reporting requirements for business purposes. The agent simply noted that the LLC's revenue was nowhere near enough to cover his personal withdrawals. The field audit expanded. The agent paid a visit to the property, took photographs of the boat in the driveway, and measured the house's square footage, comparing it to the improvements Rob had claimed. No building permits had ever been pulled for any of the alleged additions. Under immense pressure, Rob submitted amended tax returns, suddenly adding $30,000 in income and calculating the self-employment tax he owed. Penalties were immediately assessed for underpayment and for accuracy-related issues. A lien notice was drafted. Word of the audit started to spread through Rob's network of contractors. His suppliers started delaying his credit lines. Subcontractors began demanding cash up front for all their work. Rob's bids for new jobs started losing out to competitors who could quote lower prices. A reporter from the local newspaper, Lauren Kim, got wind of the story through a public records request. She called the house and left a voicemail asking for a comment. My mother answered, her voice trembling, and then hung up. Lauren showed up at their house the next day, notepad in hand. The neighbors all whispered from their front porches. The article was published on the newspaper's website a day later with the headline, Local Contractor Faces Tax Probe After Daughter's Disappearance. The sub-headline detailed the police report, the misuse of the home equity line, and the scope of the IRS audit. The print version of the article ran that Sunday, with a picture of the house, its address blurred out for privacy. The comment section of the online article flooded with messages from Rob's former clients, all citing late payments and shoddy workmanship. His business's online review score plummeted overnight. My mother called me from the parking lot of a grocery store, her sobs cracking over the phone. "Your father is ruined," she cried. "The boat is for sale. We might lose the house. You need to come home. You need to fix this." I just listened, my face a stone mask. Then I ended the call and blocked her number. Leo kept me updated on the fallout. The IRS proposed final adjustments, $60,000 in back taxes, a 20% penalty, and interest that was accruing daily. Rob tried to negotiate an installment plan, but then he missed the very first payment. Lauren, the reporter, followed up with me, sending me an email with questions about my financial contributions to the family. I declined to comment, communicating only through Leo. The collection letters started piling up, a state tax warrant, credit card defaults. Rob listed the boat for sale at a price well below market value, but he still had no buyers. My mother started moving their valuables into a storage unit, afraid the IRS would seize them. She sent me a text from a friend's phone. "We are losing absolutely everything." I deleted it without even replying. The audit closure letter finally arrived. It was a deficiency notice, giving them a 30-day window to appeal. Rob hired a lawyer and the legal fees drained the last of their savings. The media coverage expanded to a local TV news teaser and a mention on a drive-time radio show. Rob stopped parking his truck in the driveway, keeping it hidden inside the garage. Lauren published a follow-up piece, a sidebar story about the pitfalls of home equity lines and the warning signs for families. No names were mentioned, but the context was clear to anyone who had been following the story. The IRS filed a federal tax lien, which was recorded with the county. The mortgage lender was notified and demanded an immediate curtailment of the loan. Rob tried to refinance the house, but he was denied because of the lien. All of his equity was gone. My mother called my work phone, but the receptionist had been instructed to block her calls. She left a frantic message about mounting hospital bills and their lapsed health insurance coverage. The call was deleted. A community fundraising page for their legal defense was started on social media, but it was taken down after a wave of public backlash. The audit file was officially closed, pending the payment plan. But the interest was still accruing, now in the four-figure range every single month. The consequences of my father's actions were now locked in stone. The county courthouse was a gray, imposing building under a perpetually overcast sky. 9 months after the investigation began, I filed the civil complaint. I was suing for $300,000 in damages for financial exploitation and emotional distress. My attorney, Daniel Hayes, drafted the legal counts: breach of fiduciary duty, conversion, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Our exhibits included Leo's entire report, all the bank logs, and deposition transcripts. Rob initially tried to represent himself, but his legal motions were sloppy and quickly thrown out. The judge set strict discovery deadlines and ordered them into mediation. The session was a complete failure. Rob demanded that the case be dismissed, claiming that all the money I had given him were gifts, not loans. Daniel subpoenaed the lender's records. The HELOC agreement only had Rob's signature on it. There was no co-borrower and no clause that reflected my contributions. The interest statements confirmed that he had reported no additional income. A trial date was set for the spring. Daniel deposed my father under oath. Rob stumbled over his answers about the purpose of the draws and contradicted himself when confronted with the marina receipts. My mother testified reluctantly, admitting that she was aware of the transfers but claiming she didn't know the amounts. Kyle invoked his Fifth Amendment rights and refused to comply with his subpoena. The pre-trial rulings were all in our favor. The judge denied Rob's motion for a summary judgment, citing that there were clearly disputed material facts. The courtroom was packed on the first day of the trial. In his opening statement, Daniel methodically laid out the timeline. The voluntary payments I had made, all induced by my father's false promises, and the equity that was diverted into his personal assets. Jury selection was carefully managed to screen for any biases about taxes or family disputes. The witness list was short and to the point. Leo testified about his surveillance, authenticating the photographs he had taken. A vice president from the bank explained the 1,099 reporting requirements. Then my father took the stand. His voice cracked as he tried to claim that my contributions were all voluntary and that the boat was a shared family investment. The cross-examination completely shredded his defense. Daniel presented the email chains where Rob had demanded exact sums of money, with no mention of any repayment terms. The closing arguments were precise. Daniel hammered home the legal theme of unjust enrichment. Rob's lawyer made a desperate plea for jury nullification. The verdict came back in just 2 hours. The jury found him liable on all counts. They awarded me $280,000 in compensatory damages and an additional $20,000 in punitive damages. After the trial, the IRS lien was enforced. The judge approved the foreclosure of the house, with the proceeds of the sale going to satisfy the federal debt first. The remainder would go towards my judgment. A sheriff's sale was scheduled. Rob filed for bankruptcy, but the automatic stay on his assets was lifted due to the fraud exception in the law. The auction drew a small crowd. The property sold for well below its market value, which left a deficiency judgment against my father. The boat was seized separately and sold to cover the marina's lien. My mother packed their essential belongings into a U-Haul and moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in a neighboring town. She left me a voicemail from a new number, but I didn't answer it. Kyle changed jobs, moved to a different city, and disappeared from all of our old group chats. The execution of the judgment allowed us to garnish Rob's remaining bank accounts. His LLC was dissolved, and all of his tools were liquidated at an auction. Daniel filed a partial satisfaction of the judgment with the court, with the remaining balance to be pursued through a wage levy if my father ever found future employment. The foreclosure was finalized. The new owners changed the locks and completely re-landscaped the front yard. My mother downsized again, this time to a studio apartment near a bus station. Kyle's wedding was postponed indefinitely. The gavel had fallen. The accounts were finally settled. I was at a rooftop bar in downtown Austin, the cool breeze from the lake blowing against my skin. It was 5 years later, and we were at my engagement party. The space was buzzing with energy, decorated with strings of fairy lights. My fiancé, Ethan, clinked his glass with my co-workers, my hiking buddies, and my old friends from my cloud certification cohort. He had a huge grin on his face, and the ring on his finger glinted in the light as he pulled me in for a hug. We had met at a tech conference in Dallas. He was a cybersecurity expert who had challenged my team's migration strategy during a QA session. Sparks flew over drinks after the panel, and that grew into weekend hiking trips and shared music playlists. He respected my silence about my past until I was ready to share it, and when I finally told him everything, he never wavered. Our guests mingled as servers passed around trays of hors d'oeuvres and craft cocktails. My old manager, Sheila, gave a toast to my recent promotion to vice president. I was now managing a team of 12 people and a 7-figure budget. My stock package had fully matured, and my investments were thriving. I walked up to the small stage and took the microphone. Tonight is about celebrating love, but it's also about celebrating new legacies, I said. I'm proud to announce the creation of the Maya Torres Scholarship. It will provide a $5,000 grant each year to individuals who are escaping financial manipulation, while they pursue a degree or a professional certification. Maya stood beside me, absolutely beaming. She was now managing the operations for our foundation from our new office. QR codes for donations were displayed on the screens, and pledges started streaming in. Department heads from my company matched the donations, and Ethan's firm doubled all contributions. The website for the scholarship went live in the middle of the toast, and applications were already open. A few days earlier, a forwarded envelope had arrived at my apartment. The return address was a trailer park in a rural town, and the handwriting was my father's. I held it over the small fire pit on my balcony. With one flick of a lighter, the letter curled into ash, its unread contents turning into embers that drifted away into the night sky. Ethan noticed and slipped his arm around me. "You okay?" he asked. I smiled, a real smile. "Yeah," I said. "I am." The conversations around us flowed freely. Stories from colleagues who had left controlling partners, friends who were rebuilding their lives after a difficult divorce. The scholarship launched with its first 3 recipients: a nursing student, someone enrolled in a coding boot camp, and a business major. Their thank you videos played on a loop on the screens throughout the night. Ethan had already booked our wedding trip to Iceland. We would get married under the northern lights, with just a small circle of our closest friends. Soon after the party, I was promoted again, this time to oversee a global product line. I joined the board of a nonprofit. Maya scaled up our outreach efforts, creating webinars and partnering with shelters. Whispers from my old life still trickled through old contacts. My father was picking up odd handyman jobs, mostly working alone. I started speaking at conferences. My talks focused on economic independence, warning people about the red flags, isolated finances, guilt traps, and manipulation. Ethan proposed to me again, this time on a mountain summit, with snow dusting the distant peaks. The night ended with my final words to our guests. Family isn't defined by blood, it's defined by who shows up for you when you need them the most. Ethan, Maya, this circle of friends, you are my family. To everyone watching this, document everything. Trust the patterns you see, not the promises you hear. And when it's time to leave, leave. Your freedom is waiting for you on the other side of fear. Your future is not someone else's collateral. A cheer erupted from the crowd. Ethan kissed me as confetti rained down around us. The scholarship fund had reached its endowment goal, ensuring that the awards would be perpetual. The path ahead of me was gleaming. The bridges behind me were burned to the ground.